Okay, so hello everyone. Very nice to see all of you here joining us tonight in Hong Kong. I am Cusson Cheng, the assistant curator at Parasite, and also the curator of the exhibition Fanatic Heart that is currently on view in our space in Hong Kong. So for those who are not familiar of who we are, Parasite is a nonprofit art space that this year is going to be our 27th anniversary. And throughout the years, we have been curating different exhibitions and programs that usually forge a more critical conversation in relation to art and society. So opened on 9th of December, it is the exhibition Fanatic Heart. It's a show that focus on fandom culture, celebrity culture, and also to see and engage artists to create provocating works that really invite audience to have a different understanding of fandom culture and its power. So in this exhibition, I try to focus on Southeast and East Asian social political debates, and I invited 15 artists from different regions to show their works in the exhibition, to talk about these supposedly lowbrow topics, but offering a very unique perspective of how we can interpret social political issues from the lens of a fandom. So in this exhibition, I also very lucky to be able to discover one of our speakers' art work, Diane Severin Nguyen's video work called "If Revolution is a Sickness." And later we'll of course touch upon the idea and the behind the scenes of making this wonderful video work. So I think we will right away start this conversation. And before we jump into, the introduction of speakers and also all the questions, and I want to thank some of our supporters, particularly the organizations that support this talk. So we have Korean Cultural Center in Hong Kong and Poland, and Polish Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, as well as the Consulate General of the Republic of Poland in Hong Kong. Thank you so much for your generous promotion of this event. So without further ado, maybe we can briefly introduce today's speaker. We have Diane Severin Nguyen and Jakub Gryzbała over here. Diane is a very talented artist, and I'm very grateful to have her work in the show. It's the first time I saw Diane's work, it actually made me my eyes teary because it gives me so much memory of my teenage years, of how music and choreography are able to stir up so much passionate emotions and really allow us to unlock the power of music and see how we can connect that to some heavier topics in society. And later, I'm sure Diane will able to offer us more insights in terms of the meaning of this video work, the production of it, and also, highlight, the relationship between perhaps the influence of K-pop in Vietnam and Southeast Asia in general. Jakub, on the other hand, it's a very now a very popular young dancer in Poland. The first time, I think, after seeing him featuring in the video work as one of the dancers, I also looked him up on Instagram, and I very much remember how talented he is as a K-pop as a dancer, but also doing a lot of K-pop covers. And together with his, members in Majesty Dance Team in Poland. I'm sure if anyone who is from the country, you may also saw some of their performances online, as well as, in different events and competitions. So I think, since this is a talk that's about K-pop, I think what will be interesting to start with is, to ask both Diane and Jakub, how did you, first, get involved with K-pop, and do you still remember what makes you so interested and obsessed with this pop culture genre or music genre? I think maybe Diane, if you don't mind, maybe you can start first and let us know more about your affinity with K-pop.
Sure. I really got into K-pop during COVID, and so maybe that's like third generation bands that I got into. And it kind of started out as something a bit like more intellectual, where I was just kind of curious about this kind of phenomenon that felt very dominant, I guess, throughout East Asia and Southeast Asia, and also like how it was making its way over towards like Western cultures. And I think I was particularly interested in groups that had started pulling in members from different countries that were not Korea. For instance, like with, I don't know, Lisa in Blackpink, she's Thai. And I kind of started thinking about how these groups might be, I don't know, targeting different areas like geopolitically to kind of gain more markets. I thought that was interesting. But I think like as I got into it, I just became like a full-on fan. And I think I just really, I think a part of me was already primed to get into this space of fandom, because I love fandom, because it's kind of like both a sense of like kind of this hysteric belonging, but then also that you're never that thing that you're a fan of. There's also some kind of inherent distance in that space. And I think K-pop was attractive to me because it's so photographic, so visual. It's not just about the music, it's about every element that surrounds the music. And of course, like I love that kind of storytelling within, I guess, like a pop, but at the same time, it's like extremely collective and all the members are balanced out. But yeah, I think it was something about the choreography, the music, the visuals, everything about it being extremely like photographic and fragmented. And especially in this generation of K-pop, like very, I guess, primed to like disseminate itself like on media, just like as in everything can be broken down into smaller units and kind of put back together. And then through that, through that kind of like structure, I got really into the fandom of K-pop and cover culture. And that's how I discovered Majesty and Jakub.
Ah, so it seems like you actually started with a little bit more, I would say, critical approach towards K-pop. You'd start to, at first start to try to get to know more about the structure of it, the cultural influence, but then you actually also get more personal and also start to be very involved in
Yeah,
K-pop and following the trend.
yeah. And I think a lot of that, if I'm thinking about it now, is that there was kind of on the most like kind of primal level or something like an identification with the people in K-pop, like specifically the kind of like the girls in the K-pop groups. I think I just identified with them because I think I didn't really, growing up mostly in America, I didn't really have that kind of like Asian hegemonic like celebrity culture. And I think it was just so it was like, I think a part of it was this sort of compulsive consumption, because I just didn't really like have those bodies to identify with.
Hmm. Hmm. I think this is also something that is quite similar to Hong Kong, I think, because I think the influence of Korean pop culture really starts with the power of makeup. I still
Mm,
remember how, the amounts of like cosmetic products and all those endorsements start to come into Hong Kong, and then pretty much very quickly, a lot of, the newest trends of makeup, like the eyebrows and the way of, you draw the eyeliner, it's a Korean aesthetic. And I think it really starts with a little bit more of an aesthetic approach
mhm.
or influence, and then further move in to really draw people to like music, maybe like the Korean popular music, for
Yeah.
example. And because at the beginning, I think Korean pop music was not really a big hit internationally at first. It's really when it starts to incorporate more, I would say, international music elements or genre structures that start to get really popular, and then it, then it starts with uh, all the idols and trends. Jakub, what about you? I mean, I think you're younger than both me and Diane. How did you start, and engaging with K-pop, and what really makes you find it so fascinating?
Yeah, so I think I see it more from a pure dancer perspective, because yeah, I started out as a dancer, not as a K-pop coverist, uh, a long time ago, and I was always longing for kind of that diversity in dance and performance. So I was always, for example, changing dance studios because something didn't really click right for me. I didn't want to really stay still, just focus on one thing. I really like to change it up all the time. And so K-pop just was for me something like something I never have seen before in Polish music, like dance performance scene, even like that time a few years ago. And I was really fascinated by it because it was so different from everything that Poland had to offer at that time. And I think yeah, a huge part of it was also the whole aesthetic, like everything surrounding like the idols and the music, because it's not only the music and the dance, it's also whole concepts like story, as you mentioned. And I was really, really fascinated by that. And I think I kind of wanted to identify with it, like in some areas. So I decided to try it out, and I really deeply fell in love, not only with the dance, but also with the music, with idols itself. Yeah, so I think that was the main point for me.
Mm. Just now you mentioned that it's very different from what Poland could offer.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't mind, do you mind describing what's the difference? Is what is Polish really offering back then that you don't really
Yeah.
identify with as strongly?
Um, I feel like Poland, in terms of both dance and music, was like really focused on those traditional, like raw forms of the art. Like for instance, the music. Even now, it's mostly focused on like those in the underground scene, like a lot of guitar, a lot of ballads, mostly focused on singing. The dance, I feel like, wasn't really open for something new. Like there were hip hop dancers, there were jazz dancers, but I feel like the community was like really closed for something new, for a change. And I feel like K-pop is a way, kind of incorporating all those things in one. So it really creates a really diverse environment for all those things to meet up in one place. And as a K-pop fan, and also as a dance coverist, I can like pick something I really feel like at the moment I want to try out, and it's always in that one place that I can find all of those things. So yeah,
Mm,
I think that's the main like difference.
mm, mm, mm.
I think like
So,
something, I'm sorry, can I
yeah,
say
no, go
something?
ahead.
Like, I think something you said just kind of made me like reminded me of why I was interested in this sort of K-pop fandom, because like what you're talking about with Warsaw and sort of like a, almost like more Western 90s idea of like punk, you know, that is
Yeah.
something that generally represents subculture, the indie, the like kind of thing that's against like the mainstream. And there's something interesting about K-pop where it's like extremely mainstream, and at the same time the fandom actually addresses a lot of people who aren't, maybe who don't feel accepted by
Yeah.
the mainstream at the same time. And I think I'm speaking about that more globally, like almost like outside of Korea and maybe even outside of Asia, where K-pop would be like not a safe space, but some kind of space for people who are also not in like, you know, who are maybe consuming things through the internet or kind of in more like individuated spaces, and a way to like actually come together physically in real life. So there's something about media and the way K-pop is like the forms of media in which it takes on, which is very different from this sort of idea of like the underground as a place only like known about through like, you know, physical connection, or like, oh, it's like a secret that you tell someone. It's different than that. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of
So, you know, this interest or affinity leads you to also start, you know, Majesty Dance Team, and that you know, you and your friends are, you know, participating in different competitions, but also record and produce many different dance covers in public spaces in Poland. Would you mind introducing a little bit of your dance team, and you know, what do you guys do usually when you guys, you know, maybe rehearse and preparing for competitions and stuff?
Yeah, sure. We are as now 7-member dance cover group, which started out somewhere around 2 years ago, I think. At first, it was supposed to be a duo of 2 people, and it was called MJ, which stands for initials of my name and the other member's name, Marcin. But then we decided to expand it into a full group. So we added more of our friends and decided to kind of make a new name out of the one that we already had. So the name Majesty was supposed to stand, and still stands, for the quality that we really want to incorporate in all of our projects, not only dance-wise, but also video-wise, outfit-wise. Like, we really want to cover all the bases in a high-end way. And that's what we focus most of the time, I think. And so, yeah, we started out as a 4-member group, then slowly adding some of our friends also to join. And now, yeah, we are 7. We try to find time through all the university jobs and stuff, and sometimes it's really hard because we kind of have to like go around all of our schedules. Let's say we have a university classes all the day, so we kind of have to learn or meet up before and after. So usually we meet up for trainings at night, really late at night, and we train at all the times we have free together, then to record it usually the next day after a few days of training. And we have those like blocks of dance cover making, let's say. So when we decide a song we want to cover, for instance, we plan out our training and recording schedule. So we meet up a few days in a row for trainings and then recording. Then we have a break to focus on our daily lives, so jobs, university and stuff. And then usually around 2 weeks later, we meet up again. So it's like some cycles of some sort. And yeah, that's how we work together, work through our daily life, and try to kind of just, you know, kind of make everything work out with our personal lives.
Mm. What I find very interesting is that we actually also briefly mentioned before we start to talk is that I actually really see you guys have like the full package. It's not just a talent in terms of dancing, but also, you know, the thoughts that you put into the production, and also, of course, you know, your outfits when you record those videos. I think it will be, if you don't mind, I think it will be interesting to actually know, like, how did you guys come up with, you know, the outfit designs, and how did you, you know, make it happen? And did you source or buy from a specific store in Poland? It will be interesting to know a little bit more behind the scenes.
Yeah, so usually we kind of search through internet to find like the best, but also the cheapest options for us, because we are all mostly students. So we kind of have to try to make like the best quality for the lowest price possible. So it's usually really high effort. We kind of search for like secondhand things, or like on sales in retail stores, and then usually just kind of DIY the outfit. So maybe add some add-ons from another garment, or maybe sew something together. Yeah, we just kind of have to like make use of our imagination in the best way possible, just to kind of make it work all through.
Yeah. I remember when we were making our outfits for the film, you guys taught me how you can just take pantyhose and turn it into arm gloves, which I thought was really cool, and I've done for myself since then.
It's really nice to see how you guys maybe have limited resources, but you make really the best out of it. And to be honest, it doesn't look amateur at all. It looks so professional, and it's very well thought out. The design is great, and it really fits with each of your cover. I think this is very impressive, especially knowing that you guys are mostly university students and still able to take so much time and effort to prepare all these you know, production or participate in competitions. I think this is something that really surprised me at the beginning. So, so now we have a little bit idea of, you know, what Jakub has been doing in Poland as a, you know, part of Majesty Dance Team. Because since this video also has, you know, a lot of connection with Vietnamese diasporic experiences, I would love to actually know more from Diane. You know, perhaps you know, in Vietnam or for Vietnamese diasporic community, how do you think Korean pop culture or K-pop, how did it really, you know, become such a, seems like a crucial element in your life or in your friends you know, experience?
I think it was similar to what you said earlier, where in Vietnam, maybe the first thing was the makeup, kind of like the flat eyebrows and like certain kind of looks. It kind of came down a lot to the face, and then maybe the fashion to some extent. Yeah, I would say that that's kind of how, and then like maybe in the States, the way that K-pop has moved through has also been a lot of this kind of like visual identification. I mean, I think like for the States, even though I think like the thought of having, you know, any kind of Asian idol that kind of has this international outreach is very like powerful for a lot of people, or like younger people. And just going to the like Blackpink concert and kind of seeing the full, I went to the Blackpink concert when I was in actually Houston, Texas, and just seeing the full, I don't know, range of Asian diaspora of like all ages was pretty intense, actually. Like, I don't think I'd ever been to an event where I felt that kind of diversity. And yeah, I would just say that maybe it started out with this visual fashion space. And I think it's interesting with the fashion, how K-pop in both like problematic and inspiring ways really cycles through so many types of subcultures. Like it is all about referencing the subcultural on the most aesthetic level. And maybe that comes down to tiny accessory details, to the way that the music is composed by like referencing like 7 different subcultures in one song. And I think that has something to do with like more broadly like in Asian history, where, you know, regimes have either kind of suppressed or even destroyed certain types of potential, like I don't know what the West would call subculture, but kind of entire histories or things have been rewritten many times. And I think like it's not that there isn't like any real subculture in Asia, because there is, but I think that is also a very like Western idea, and it's something that is imported into K-pop, you know, because there's like, and by subculture, I mean, it can be anything from like the idea of being like rocker or punk to something else. But I think that all of that is like pushed through K-pop very rapidly. And I think that also kind of influences like the visual culture in a place like Vietnam. Or the
And I
design.
think
Mhm.
I think that it's definitely, you know, touched upon in your video work of Revolution is a Sickness. And you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, I would describe your work as very heavily layered with subtext, just like K-pop, how it has, you know, so many different fusions of subcultures, but at the same time you talks about something also quite you know, able to connect or bridge you know, Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe by using, you know, K-pop almost as like a common language, and how you further develop this kind of idea at the end of the work, where you also co-wrote the music and lyrics, and you know, transform this music video format into something that I think most of the audience, you know, they also find it very powerful. And this is something I really need to like compliment our audience, because it's really the first time in Paris that I see people really sit through that 20 minutes and see the whole video work. And I think this is, you know, this really shows how the work is so empowering, at the same time encapsulating, you know, so many of our feelings, especially when we see, you know, how in this video is able to stir up a lot of unspoken emotions, I would say. So, you know, you know, in the exhibition catalog or the tours, I've always talked about, you know, the concepts of the work, but something that we rarely talk about is the behind the scenes and the production of the work. And that is why I think, you know, like having Diane and Jakub here uh, now at the talk, I think will be interesting to know more about the preparation, and how, you know, like how did you, you know, finish shooting in Poland, and you know, the casting of the dance crew. I think that will be something interesting for us to know about. Maybe Diane, if you don't mind, maybe you can share more insights of how you know, figure out all this, you know, at the beginning of the project, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I guess I'll start out with just a little bit conceptually and then go into kind of the
Yeah.
physical thing. But I think like, you know, I saw certain videos when I was still in the States before I left for, I mean, I guess as I was getting into K-pop more deeply, I think from like BTS and NCT and a lot of these Korean music videos, I noticed that they would have like a lot of kind of brutalist or even like post-war architecture in them, place spaces and buildings and kind of architectural features that I kind of knew weren't actually in Korea. And I found out like a lot of them were being filmed in Russia and the Ukraine. So you kind of have this like punk background and then these sort of Korean bodies happening. And then I think when I was looking at K-pop covers being made in Eastern Europe, I also felt like, oh, it felt like almost like a homecoming to that. And so there was a lot there that was, to me, it's kind of about like recuperation or kind of maybe sentimentality for history that you like brushed up against but weren't fully a part of, and what those relationships kind of meant. But then, yeah, with I think that the most important part is that all of this was like already existing. So it's not like I had to go into Poland and like train people to become like to be into K-pop. There was already such a large community, which I also noticed seemed more popular in Eastern Europe than Western Europe, or maybe more in South America. And that's kind of like my theory, is that maybe K-pop is more popular in countries with kind of strong communist backgrounds. And yeah, so before I even left for Poland, I had already created a master list of all the major dance crews that I'd found on Instagram. And of course, I noticed that Jakub was maybe the most popular dancer in like on the scene. And so I had a master list together, working with a choreographer, Alvin Tran. We created kind of like a basic skeleton dance, which we then reached out to a pretty mass amount of people, asking them to send in an audition. And from this audition, we narrowed it down to a smaller group of people. I think, I don't know, like 40 to 60 people, who we then asked to come to an audition in real life, which was very, yeah, it was interesting because thinking about how the K-pop, like for instance, like when we auditioned people, we kind of had to think about the different looks we wanted within the group. I mean, given what was available, but you know, it's kind of been, we were thinking a lot in the way like that a K-pop group would have to represent different identities within one collective. So we kind of broke people off. A lot of it was visual, but then we just tried to find the best dancer from each visual category. And yeah, and then in the end, we picked 5 people. But it was very intense, right, Jakub? It was like a kind of high stress. Or I don't know. What did you think? Maybe you weren't nervous because you knew you were going to get in, but
No, I was really nervous actually, because it really felt like a whole, I don't know, dance contest experience. All those stages of firstly auditioning online, then having to meet up with all those people that also were casted like in person, and to show to you our best abilities was really something stressful, but I also feel like really maybe gave us a lot of experience to me as a dancer for sure. Yeah, but I feel like the whole process of making the film was really an experience that brought me a lot of experience, if I can say it like this, because we really had like those 3 intense days of training the choreography, which covered a lot of dance styles, like from hip hop to modern to jazz, then followed up by even more intense days of filming, like all over the Warsaw, and not only in Warsaw. I think it was like truly an eye-opening even experience for me, as someone who is like looking up to be someone like this in the future, like working in such an environment in the future. Like it was really an experience that brought a lot for me as a dancer.
Diane, how many days did you guys need to finish all the shootings?
Maybe the actual shooting only took place over 3 days. Am I right, Jakub?
Wow.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Preparation took a while. And then with the filming, it was, you know, we kind of just drove around in like this van and then jumped out at locations. I don't think we had like a permit for any location necessarily. It was about but before that, I'd done a lot of scouting, and I kind of looked at spaces that were kind of, I mean, there were spaces that were kind of maybe unsafe to dance in. We had a few of those, like maybe there was that one dance no one can see, but there's broken glass all over the ground. So maybe that was like pretty hard. But I think with the public spaces, you know, in a way, it's not my idea, because I think a lot of dance crews in Poland were using a lot of these like public spaces to do their dances in. And I think part of dancing in public is like, you understand that people are going to be looking at you and seeing you and maybe even make fun of you or admire you. And that's already, I think all the dancers are already kind of used to dancing in public for that reason. So actually those spaces felt like the least stressful, if anything, because it felt like a format that we could all get into, that we already understood. And yeah, I think there was like an interesting exchange where, for instance, like I made you guys go dance in certain places like the skate park, which you then later with your own crew, making your own video, filmed your own video in a location that we'd scouted. And then maybe I, you know, went to something like the Palace of Science and Culture, where I'd seen not from you guys, but maybe another group do make like a video there. So there was kind of this like, exchange of knowledge actually that happened. And then after like our film shoot was over, some of the kids that I had casted ended up joining Jakub's group. So I kind of accidentally created more of hegemony of like dancers. And
I also noticed that how, you know, I was watching some of maybe the Majesty Team's covers on Instagram, and I noticed that, you know, people are not seeing this as something surprising. It seems that they're already very used to, you know, these different dance crews taking up public spaces to record these covers, you know, for a certain time, and they seem to be also really enjoying it as an audience. And it's very, very surprising for me, because in Hong Kong, I mean, I think we do have certain K-pop dance cover groups, but I rarely see them, even pre-COVID times, that they have these, you know, regular practices of using public spaces for dance covers or rehearsals. I think so, but for recording like professional dance covers is not something that is very familiar with for Hong Kong audience or public. So it's really, you know, nice and refreshing to see how perhaps this kind of like cover production can actually activate, you know, certain public spaces as such, like in Poland. And this is something that I think it's very specific in terms of the context, and but I think there are, you know, a few sites that are very specific, and it adds a lot of meanings to the video, especially. I didn't include the image over here, but Diana, remember you definitely choose certain sites where there are more spaces that has those kind of communist or socialist, you know, monuments or sculptures, you know, laying around like in a park, or, you know, like these, you know, outside of the city hall, for example. I think these really add a little bit more rebellious or so to say politically incorrectness in terms of portraying certain public sites. Did you take these in mind when you're producing the work?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, you know, this building here was sort of like it's a very contested sort of gift from Stalin. It's a perfect replica of a university building in Russia, and it was like gifted to Poland. We also filmed at like the Warsaw Uprising Monument. We filmed at, wait, Jakub, do you remember that one? What's that? The one that I always forget what it's about. It's like where the guy is like kind of mining for bombs. You know, the one where we did WAP in front of as a warm up. well, anyway, we felt, and yeah, that one. I filmed at the Jewish cemetery, which isn't very coded in a way that would be like clear to the audience. But I think like with each of these spaces, I think like Poland in particular has like a very long history of censorship, of like the government rewriting like the national narrative through monuments, the removal of monuments, I think, and the reinstatement of monuments. And I think that had been kind of happening a lot in the States and in other parts of the world, like in the moment that I was conceiving of the project. And I think like, yeah, it's kind of like the way that K-pop deals with subculture. I guess I'm interested in how these movements like take kind of emblems that become maybe banal or just civic or kind of unimportant or boring over time, and how they can be recharged by like bodies being around them. So it was kind of about that, like, so the spaces varied in terms of how charged they were, I guess is what I'm saying. And some things were more secretly charged and some things were so explicitly charged that they were just kind of, you know, they become boring. Yeah.
I think what will be also interesting to know is because this video actually has like, I would say kind of like three sections. You know, there's sections that are, you know, using like a Polish voiceover, and there's the one with the Vietnamese voiceover. And I think I think we'll only be able to interpret this video in a more holistic manner if we also talk a little bit more about the Vietnamese experience, because there are, there's the section where there is this Vietnamese voiceover talking a little bit more, I would say, illustrating more the desperate experience that they have been through. And I think, Diane, you being also a Vietnamese part of the community, but now living in America. I think there are a lot of personal stories also involved in this narrative. Especially, I remember it very explicitly that there is one a phrase that is to kind of question that: do you actually find me cute, or am I just being different? And this is something that I actually resonate very strongly, because I still remember when I was traveling in Europe, especially in Germany, when talking to strangers and get to know friends in those tourist dormitories, and we know whenever they discover me being a Hong Konger, or so to say being Asian, I vividly remember how people use the word cute to describe me very frequently. But like cute in Chinese actually means lovable. So it actually starts to make me wonder, what do you mean by like me being lovable? So that sentence is really like hit me really hard. Like, oh, so yeah, like, am I just because I'm different that you cannot really think of a word to describe me very, in detail? So you just think of a nice word, like cute, to describe me. And so this is just an example that I find it, that I resonate strongly. So maybe Diane, do you mind sharing a little bit more how when you write that particular storyline, like what kind of experience do you really want to incorporate in the work?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I wanted to like speak to a certain kind of ambivalence, to being accepted by the group, to being kind of applauded with like power, to be validated, and especially, to speak on terms of a regime that like maybe isn't yours to begin with, that wasn't created with you in mind. I think that is an important experience that I always want to express in my work is, like how to communicate on like with language that, isn't yours or has been used to like oppress you on some level. And I think like, with the video, another entry point into the film is just like kind of about what it means to be an artist, and like maybe even an artist in the art world, and how that like deals with kind of like I don't know, like Western knowledge or something. And I think like the film was a way for me to speak through, this Vietnamese character in Poland, and kind of speaking through like supposedly opposing histories that maybe this person didn't even, that is actually just like someone else's theater. And I guess I mean that in that, like, with the Vietnamese in Poland, it's kind of the biggest like minority group in Poland, actually, or the Vietnamese. And most of them came pre-1989, which is like before the Berlin Wall fell. And those Vietnamese people came from like North Vietnam. And then I think after 89, a large group of Vietnamese people migrate, like, or more so refugees. So we're talking also about this state-sanctioned difference between who is like an immigrant and who is a refugee, when really the Vietnam War, anyway, you understand what I'm saying. And yeah, so I guess I was thinking about these two groups of Vietnamese people in Warsaw, the pre-89, the post-89, who came from South Vietnam, and how they are not necessarily intermingled. There's still kind of like separation between them. And you can find that separation occurring in places like Berlin as well, which have like a big Vietnamese population. And so, yeah, I think I wanted to, like, I think thinking through that made me think about how, like, you know, Asia's been kind of this ideological theater for the West, and especially with like the Cold War and Vietnam War. So Veronica, in a way, is like, I guess, embodying all of that and also none of that at the same time. And I found Veronica, like, I was looking for an actress for a really long time, and I couldn't find like a Vietnamese actress, because obviously the Vietnamese aren't going to be represented by kind of commercial mediums, like modeling agency or acting or something in Poland. And weirdly, there weren't that many, like, or I think I only saw one or two, Jakub, as I was looking through every single group in Warsaw, where there was actually like a Vietnamese member or any Asian members. And, you know, there were like not very many. And so I found this girl, Veronica Nguyen, on Instagram, because I was just in bed, like, searching for random Vietnamese girls in Warsaw by typing in like a common first name, which is Veronica with a W, and then adding my last name. And she was the first person to pop up. And so that's who I ended up casting for the film. And yeah, I think her character is just like kind of like me, but also herself, which is kind of dealing with like, in order to tell her story in a way that's like understood and gives her power in this new world that she lives in, she kind of has to like let go of something else. Like, so there's some kind of loss in sort of gaining power. Yeah.
I think this really was this particularly was talked about. It's mentioned, especially in the music video. I think, you know, the lyrics that you wrote was, I remember there was an audience visiting the show and wrote like a huge, like, long comment, and then she posted on Instagram, and, you know, she mentioned something that, you know, both Diane and I didn't really pay attention to it, but you know, especially when you mentioned that Veronica needs to lose something in order to get, you know, assess a certain power, is that it's like there is, you know, losing yourself in a new image, right? So it's you need to lose your in a way Vietnamese identity in order to kind of feel like you're part of, you know, where you are living in right now. And I think this is something that a lot of diasporic community is going through. Because you mentioned, you know, like in Berlin, there's also a huge Vietnamese community over there. But I talked to, you know, at least quite a few people over there, but, you know, a lot of time that the older generation, they actually don't really feel they're part of Germany at all. They feel like they are very visible in the country, but they're at the same time also invisible. You know, Vietnamese restaurants are everywhere, beauty parlors as well, but no one really pay attention to what they've been through, why they're here. People just really see it as habitual. You know, they're there, but there is no kind of a way or intention almost to get to know, this, very visible population in the country. And I think this is something that I, feel very strongly whenever I watch the video. And but at the same time, there is that kind of sense of emancipation, especially when further on, at the climax of the music video, it's a the music is like really, really rebellious with very heavy beats, and you can really feel the sense of passion and almost like I would say compassionate anger at the end of the work. And I think this is something that I want to connect with, like the sense of revolution, the feeling of that you can start something revolutionary by participating in like very intense choreography or doing covers and listen to K-pop music. I think this is something that I would love to also ask Jakub, like as still as a young part of a younger generation, and like listening to K-pop and also do all these covers in public spaces. It's actually, I'm sure it means more than just producing a nice video. I think for you guys, it's also to have a platform to speak your mind. And I actually really would love to learn more about a little bit more your personal feelings about doing all of these activities or preparation, and as a K-pop fan, and also maybe a young Polish part of a younger Polish generation.
Yeah, I think for us it comes from a lot of different places, like our motivation for dancing, for covering. First of all, I think all of us were kind of like parts of the excluded communities while growing up, like maybe in terms of our appearance or in terms of our beliefs or even sexual orientation or religion. So we, even as Polish people, were like even partly excluded from the general community, like the youth community. Also, as you, Diane, mentioned, like kind of mentioned before, like all those feelings connected to like the communism period or even the World War period. We weren't a part of it, but we were brought up in all those feelings by our parents or even grandparents. So we were always feeling kind of locked up in those cages of the past. And so I think all of that kind of contributed to us really wanted to express ourselves and show that to people like in the most direct way possible. So of course, dance is like our medium to kind of break out from those cages. And I think that dancing in public is what's really empowering for us, because we just come up like randomly and start dancing in the old town, and people don't really know what's happening, but they see us and just decide to stay and stare at us, and they can see all of our feelings being expressed through the dance, the outfits, all of our artistry that's being put in and showed to people. So I think we are kind of like really showing our maybe youth experiences, kind of like letting all of our feelings that have been locked up all those years inside of us out now, and really like defining ourselves as people, as members of society, just by showing it directly to like random audience, and also in the internet by posting the videos of us dancing in public.
Diane, I actually have a question for you in terms of the choreography in the video, because you know you're involved, Alvin, in terms of choreographing the dance moves. But you being also kind of like the director when you see the videos being produced. I'm quite curious, like when you really see Jakub and the other dancers really performing the choreography and with the music that you also co-wrote, how did you actually feel the first time when you see this really in front of your eyes? I think this might be something very powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really powerful. It was so beautiful, but also it kind of felt like, sorry if this sounds dehumanizing, but kind of like making one big sculpture or something. And in that way, it was just like, I don't know, it was very moving. There's just something that can't replace what to kind of give these ideas life and to give them flesh. And I don't know, it was just like kind of one of the most moving experiences I've ever had. And yeah, and I think that it really came down, like I think you have to watch the video a lot of I mean, I guess I know your guys' bodies so well now, but just how everyone moves differently and their weaknesses and their strengths, and kind of like, and I think in making the choreography, I watch so many videos, and I'm not like a super well-trained dancer, even though I do love to dance, but I think it was kind of similar to the process of making the music, and in a way similar to the process of making the clothes. And I got into a lot of this K-pop mindset, how all these things reflect one another. And, in the music, there will be certain kind of like sounds that are a bit like militaristic, like bells and whistles and marching. And, there's something also like, I would say, violent about everything. I mean, I see how K-pop is like empowering, but it's also, like a product of intense industrialization, and the product of like a lot of suffering, I would say, to kind of get it to where it is. And so I think like all of that desire towards perfection, it kind of all melded together to kind of create even the feeling that I had seeing them dance, because I knew that they suffered in kind of like a micro amount of time, but I can imagine that to be a trainee for 8 years and getting like having these crazy schedules where you train for 2 weeks and you have 1 day break, and they're like 14-hour days, and you live in a dormitory with, I kind of love that the suffering is also embedded in the narrative and the desire that we have for the K-pop groups. Like, we know they suffered, and so they deserve it. And it's so much about this collectivity, actually, even in being a fan, in supporting the ones that you like. I don't know, I think I think I had the transfer of that whole universe brought in when I was making the project. Yeah, I forget where I was going with that, but yeah, just the general feeling of like suffering and perfection and detail was, it was just amazing to have it like all in real life.
I really agree with you. Thankfully, Hong Kong is opening up the borders, and I really hope, we still have 1 week left till the closing of the show. And if you're in Hong Kong, you really, really need to experience this video work in person, and being immersed in this environment, and where I think also love to highlight the spatial design of the space, which Diane back then in her first presentation of the work, she also plays with a lot of theatricality, and incorporating a lot of, I would say, communist aesthetic, with the bright red, carpets and gold or yellow like curtains. And we also try to incorporate that in this exhibition, and blending the blood red and kind of mustard yellow and the white speakers and projection screens. We also want to kind of break down the colors of Vietnamese and Polish flags, and kind of dissolving the borders, and kind of really try to use a visual, a spatial, scenographic experience to also allow, invite audience to really get into that kind of intense environment. And I actually, Jakub, since you're almost graduating, I actually have just a more speculative question for you. Like after you graduate, I'm sure you also want to continue, leading Majesty, to more events and more exposure. Do you have any plans for that? I think it will be nice to know a little bit of your, the team's upcoming planning in terms of, the activities or the competitions that you might be considering to join.
Yeah. I think that other than that, we really want to expand our team to be something more than a K-pop dance cover group. Maybe start making our own choreos, expand more on the workshops, dance workshops side of dancing. So yeah, just expand in like in terms of dance as much as possible, and hopefully make Majesty even more known, to spread our message, spread our videos to even larger audience.
For Diane, I remember you mentioned that it would be nice to, also kind of tour this video to Korea. I think this will be like creating some different attention, because I remember you mentioned that, also speaking from my personal experience, I think Korean locals, they actually didn't really imagine like the power of K-pop can be so influential, but also means so different, for example, for Vietnamese and Polish communities. And and since you have this also like interest in merging popular culture and more like, I would say, heavier topics as well, do you have any plans to, maybe further develop this kind of artistic direction and create, different work to expand this narrative and discussion?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm making a new film soon, which I told you a lot about already, but yeah, I mean, I think in general, I just want to keep speaking to some of these messages. And yeah, and to kind of address what, like, I guess on some level, what the middle brow is that the word you used in the beginning? But I think that, yeah, I'm always interested in how like humans, I don't know, get together and form groups and also feel alienated from the groups. And yeah, I guess I'm into this sort of individual versus group trajectory. But yeah, I would love to show the film in Korea at some point. I think it would be really cool for it to be reflected back in this way. And I would love to find a reason to bring Jakub to Korea.
Have you been to Korea before?
No, I haven't been. Never.
Then I'm sure you'll really love the culture and able to experience firsthand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, for the participants in the talk, if any of you guys have questions for Diane, Jakub, or me. If you do, feel free to leave a comment in the chat and we can refer to it. Or if you feel comfortable, you can also unmute yourself and ask the question directly as well. Let's give it some time. If not, I have a question.
Yeah, I think one thing that's like was hard to talk about, sorry, this isn't a question or it's just like a comment, but
Yeah.
is how sexuality would shift like cross-culturally with K-pop because of how people identify, you know, how it gives different, it gives so much space for different kinds of gender expressions, and like how maybe within Korea that would be a hard thing to translate. And you guys probably know what I'm getting at, but it's just kind of like interesting how it does give such like, I don't know. Like, I think that, yeah, depending on who I'm talking about the film with, a lot of people are interested in like how K-pop expresses gender and like the limitations of it, and also like kind of the openness of it at the same time. Especially
I think for K-pop, it's quite like with a lot of contradictions. I think in some way it's there's definitely like also like the sexualization of idols, but at the same time in real life, you know, they've been through really, really harsh situations where maybe, for example, maybe they are part of the LGBTQ community, but because of all these pressure, they're not really able to disclose their sexual identity, and they always need to kind of blend in and pretend nothing happened. And but at the same time, you know, I think, you know, to just take BTS for example, like in Korea, I think people have a certain perception of BTS, but if we look at, you know, how they have like talks on the Ellen show, you know, in the States, you know, people see them so differently. They see as, you know, almost like the representation of the diverse voices. But in Korea, it's they perhaps see them as like very singular, like a boy, like just a typical boy group. So it seems like, you know, in different contexts, you can really see, you know, how different we perceive, you know, idols. And I would say maybe in Hong Kong, you know, like we have our own kind of idols in the city, and it's very fascinating to see the different perceptions of how we see K-pop idols and Hong Kong idols. So for those of you who may not be from Hong Kong, you know, we have a 12-member boy group called Mirror. And, you know, the 12 different members, they all have distinct personalities. And it's really amazing to see this new sensation of local celebrities since the 80s and 90s that was regarded as the golden era of Hong Kong pop culture. And, you know, at the beginning, there are also a lot of people were criticizing, you know, this boy band is just copying a lot of K-pop idol groups. Then you see, you know, people start to really identify with different members, and ones that have more exposure, you know, it's just creates a completely different momentum, and people start to really care about this group of idols as represent, you know, a different. It's almost like a parallel of, you know, a new form of Hong Kong identity. And I think maybe this is something that perhaps for Jakub, you know, in Poland, you know, when there is nothing to offer, you know, from Polish music scene or pop scene, but, you know, when K-pop idols, you know, or K-pop culture start to emerge in Poland, there's a new kind of really new sense of collectivity for you to engage with and to identify with. And I think this is, I think ultimately, I think, you know, no matter it's from this talk or from the exhibition in Hong Kong, I think one of the very crucial ideas that, you know, like identification and embodiment and how we relate to these idols, it may seem very cliche, or it's like, you know, illogical feelings or desires, but it is because of this, you know, you know, untranslatable feelings that I think is very important, because it actually offers us a very important a starting point to see perhaps our daily lives in a very different way. And I think why rather than avoiding it or merely criticizing these more like lowbrow cultures, I think it's very important to actually go straight for it. And, you know, why not adopt the role of a fan, and then we can see things very differently. You know, it's seeing things through desire, through emotions, but isn't that exactly, you know, the same like everyday life experiences. And I think this is something that, you know, from this talk and, you know, with the sharing from Diane and Jakub, I think this really wraps up really nicely to allow us to perhaps, you know, not don't criticize right away. We can engage with a pop culture phenomenon, and we can still maintain a certain critical distance, but at the same time has a personal feeling to a certain topic. But you know, but we can still able to understand and see things more clearly. So I think since there is no questions from the audience, I think our talk will end here. So before we hop off, I just want to do a little bit last promotion about the show. We still have 1 week left since the closing, and we still have one more Cantonese tour coming up this Saturday at Parasite, led by me. And following the tour will also be a perfume workshop where I collaborate with a perfume blogger in Hong Kong to really look at this fandom culture from an olfactory perspective, which I think is very intriguing. A lot of times we look at just idols, but we forget a lot of perfume advertisements are endorsed by celebrities. And there seems to be this kind of creation of desire and fantasy through scents, for scents and perfume. And I think, you know, participating in this workshop will allow us to have another different understanding of how we idolize these celebrities and understand actually on a deeper level of how our desire is constructed. So if you're interested, please come by this Saturday at Parasite, and I will see you there. So thank you again for everyone joining us tonight or this morning for the talk. And feel free to follow us on social media, and see you soon. So thank you so much, and have a great evening and a good day ahead for Diane.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Jakub, Diane. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.